Hello, hello.
Good to see you guys. Here we
How's
go.
everybody doing today?
Alex, what's something you're excited about in life right now?
Honestly, I'm excited about this event we're going to because I'm going to Nashville for the first time in my life. So,
The
um,
first time?
I've never been to Nashville, and my fiance's been, and she swears by it. She thinks it's amazing. In fact, she loves it so much that she's coming out. Like I'm doing an event that ends on a Thursday, so she's coming to Nashville. We're gonna spend Friday and Saturday bumming around Nashville,
That's
and then
awesome.
I'm packing up and going to MSP GeekCon, and she's headed home. But
I think
um,
we've had this conversation, but that's just like I feel like I've hung out with you in Nashville at there's just so many shows there. But
Yeah,
I
right.
guess
Well, you and I have been to many other places together that it all runs together, but no, I've never been to Nashville, which I'm excited for it.
yeah, I
It's
saw Marnie there like a
one of
few
those
weeks ago.
legendary cities. Yeah, well, she's the Robin. She does all the Robin stuff, so she winds up there a
Oh,
ton.
got it.
Yep.
So you guys split stuff by type of car.
We
That's what I
really
was,
it just kind of happened that way.
yeah.
Um,
Because you're at all the
you know,
seven figure stuff, right?
I do all the seven figure stuff. She does Robbins. I've done all the Marketopia stuff that we do. So it just depends on who we're working with. I do all the Taylor Business Group. She does
Got it.
um, Evolve. So yeah, we just kind of split it up. So depending on who you are, you may never see me, depending on where you hang out. Hopefully, some of you who never see me are stuck with me today.
There you go. So I'll see you in Miami at the Taylor Business Group one then.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's always nice, and it's not in a tough place to hang out.
No.
They typically get us right close to the beach and do something cool. So
Yeah. Sweet.
yeah.
Well,
So if you're not a Taylor Business Group member, you should join just so you can go hang out on the beach and call it your annual conference. That's
yeah,
just words of wisdom.
it's a good time. Seeing Ryan Lakin do all his stuff on stage is always fun.
He's that dude is made for like radio and TV. Like he's the heck of the stage presence. I didn't know him until last year's event there.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
he's got the voice for radio. He's as good of an MC as they come.
Yeah. All right. So you're excited for Nashville. That's awesome. I love
Yeah. What are you
Nashville.
excited for?
I'm excited for the Taylor Business Group Miami show for
Yeah.
sure. We just signed up to sponsor the Gradient conference in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Which says it's like the coolest like online platform you've ever seen. So excited to play around with that tool.
Nice.
Yeah, if that's a free one. It's online. It's June 1st. So plug for the Gradient conference.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that kind of plays into today's topic, right? Meeting our customers where they are. So we meet a lot of our customers at conferences and trade shows, but sometimes they don't go to conferences and trade shows. So now we
Yeah.
get the online platforms and things like that. Is anybody, first off, I haven't seen anybody in chat. Is chat working for you guys? Do we have that turned on or did we break something?
Let's see who's
Looks
going
like
to be
nobody
first.
can chat.
We could start like a point
Oh,
system
good
today.
deal. Oh, Matt wins.
Oh man, that's a little insider trading.
Good deal. Good deal. So chat's working. Feel free to join in and have some conversations with us today, guys. We're not going to use the whole hour, but we want to get you guys through some pretty interesting content. Bobby and I both come from different sides of client success and client experience, and we're kind of junkies around that stuff. So that leads us into what we're talking about today, which is how to meet your customers where they are, which it sounds really cliche. So we're going to unpack that a little bit and talk through it and go from there. So with that, let's get rocking and rolling.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. Oh, I have the slide deck. All right,
You have
let's
the
do
slide. Yeah.
it. There we go. Alex, talk about yourself.
Yeah. So I 16 and a half years as an MSP, just like all the folks in the chat today. So been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I sold my MSP in 2020 in the beginnings of a pandemic. Actually, I guess it was kind of well into the pandemic. It was in August. So, things were really weird. And some random guy showed up at my attorney's office for something else. And my attorney calls me and says, "Hey, I met the guy today who's going to buy your company." And I said, "That's not really how this works." And he said, "You pay me a lot of money, so shut up and do what I told you to do." And I said, "Okay." And 45 days later, I didn't work at an MSP anymore, which was weird and fast and crazy. But along the way, I had already started Lifecycle Insights. And so I had, I had been building this product to improve the way that we delivered around account management and the way that we delivered the customer experience, because we knew that cobbling together reports out of disparate systems and trying to get the same deliverable out of a technical account manager and a non-technical account manager, or from me as the CEO, we were just getting three completely different results, and it didn't line up and it didn't work well. So we started building this platform. When I got the opportunity to sell my MSP, I had already realized that this platform was going to shoot for the moon. So I sold it. I went full-time at Lifecycle Insights, spent a couple of years there, and we just recently had an exit to ScalePad. So I'm now the partner and community lead for Lifecycle Insights at ScalePad. And occasionally I do silly shit like dress up as Captain Obvious on stage and give presentations, and and whatever you got to do to have a good time, right?
Congrats, Alex.
Thank you.
Super excited to see what you guys are going to do with ScalePad. More
Yeah, me
firepower.
too. There's a lot of opportunity here.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
So tell me about you.
Yeah.
Tell me Bobby Jacobs' story, because I first met you when you were at LionGuard.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm the head of growth at Thread. Love Thread. I've been here about 7 or 8 months or so. So not a super long time. We're a bit of a newer vendor. So I'll talk a bit more about that. I started working with MSPs in my first real sales job. I'm in Houston, and so I ended up in an old warehouse selling refurbished HP product. Day one, I created an AIM account, and apparently that's how refurbished hardware is sold. At least it was, a number of years ago, and that was like the funniest job I've ever had. I only did it for 6 months. It felt like I was there for 5 years. After that, I studied entrepreneurship in my undergrad. So I got more into like startup accelerator type things. And that's actually where I'm at the LionGuard team. Joe and Vin were like early members of the accelerator I was working at. So I knew them for a few years. And I was like, oh, hey, I've actually talked to MSPs before. Like I used to work with them a little bit.
That's interesting.
And so it was just super fun whenever I got to see them kind of figure out automated documentation and some of like what LionGuard was going to be. Had the opportunity to join them. And then I just fell in love with the channel from there. Like, it's so cool because it's a big industry, right? Like you can build a company and sell it to ScalePad and have a great time. But at the same time, you kind of know everybody too, right?
It's the smallest big industry out there, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So personally, I just get on board with the mission of helping MSPs like protect and support small business like so quickly. It's like, I can wake up every morning, and if I'm helping an MSP in some way be more efficient or provide better experience or whatever it is, like I can tell myself I'm helping save the world. And I think that's true. Like, as corny as that sounds, I really do like get fired up about it.
No, it's one of those things, especially, and I talk to Ray Orsini about this all the time. Both of us were former MSPs, and both of us feel more like MSPs today than we did when we ran them. It's wonderful to have a platform like this to be able to spread the word and help educate and lift everybody up. So yeah, it's a great mission, and it's an awesome place to be. So now you've landed at Thread. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who Thread is?
Yeah. So, what really excites me about Thread is that Thread helps MSPs work with their customers. It's between the MSP and the customer, which not a lot of tools are, right? There's a lot of awesome tools in the channel, but most of them are like back-end efficiency tools or something the techs use. Thread focuses on that customer experience. And, I'm dressed up as a pirate in the slide before this because we talk a lot about the idea of death to the ticket. We like to say that tickets are no way to treat somebody. Like, they just weren't meant for communication.
If
right?
you've ever been on the receiving side of that, I mean, you know what it feels like. It's terrible. And we all know it, but we bought these behemoth platforms that require us to treat everything like a ticket. And then we get clubbed over the head and told, if it's not in ConnectWise, it didn't happen. So we're not about to deal with anything outside of a ticket, right? So and you guys kind of help solve part of that problem.
For sure. It's tough because, like, if it's not in ConnectWise or whatever PSA, it didn't happen, is true and should be true. Like, you need to follow process, but you also need process and tools that help you work normally and naturally and efficiently. And so it's kind of time for some updates there. And so, like, practically with Thread, integrated chat is a big part of what we do. We put apps right inside the end customer's Teams or Slack environment. So basically they can chat with the MSP. It opens a ticket. It gives the MSP an awesome place to work on the back end. It's kind of like if Discord had a baby with a PSA. It's kind of what our back end tools like.
That's awesome.
And then we bring a bunch of AI in. So we're a Microsoft startup, not meaning we're owned by Microsoft, but just that we work really closely with OpenAI. And so we'll like write time entries for you. We'll prioritize tickets. There's more and more stuff coming there too.
And you guys are using some real automation there that isn't available out of the PSA, out of the box.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Some of it's workflow based, some of it's AI based. We're not going to go through like all of like a full demo of Thread and stuff today, but happy to do that with anybody later.
Don't worry. If you guys want to buy some Thread, Bobby will help you
I
out.
don't know. I'll try to find some time. We'll
That's
see.
not today's purpose, but you had me over at Thread, even back in the Chat Genie days, where you guys were talking about, look, we need to remove friction from the service delivery process. And that's something that we've been big at here at Lifecycle Insights, right? We're all about how do we remove friction from client engagement? How do we be easier to work with? How do we make it so that the MSP and the customer regain their relationship? And that's important. And it's awesome that you guys are building towards that goal. And it's something that I think we have in common there.
Yeah, we do have that in common. So tell us about Lifecycle.
Yeah, so we launched Lifecycle Insights at IT Nation 2019. We had an amazing plan. We were going to do 3 trade shows in our first year, and then the world shut down. And we looked at this and said, well, our developers have spent almost a year building it. We spent a whole bunch of money to go to IT Nation as our first startup trade show. It was big and scary. Yep. We backed our own product release. So it was literally bootstrap funding. We didn't have $10 million to go spend to go figure it out. So we really had to figure out how we were going to take this product to market. The cool thing about what we did at Lifecycle Insights was we pivoted really quickly, and we did the go where your customers are. And when the trade shows shut down, the MSP space fled to Zoom, to Facebook, to Slack, to all these places. And we just kind of integrated ourselves there. So as a client management platform, it was really our goal to show MSPs there was a better way to use some of the data they had in that ConnectWise. If it's not in there, it didn't happen. Well, we can extract a lot of data out of there, make it more useful, more functional to the customer, to the end customer. And at the end of the day, our goal is to have server room conversation, or turn server room conversations into boardroom conversations, right? We do the C-level focus, and no nerd words is kind of a thing that we banter about over here, but we really try and take that complicated conversation that you guys are used to having and turn it into a boardroom conversation, an executive level conversation, so that an MSP feels prepared to go sit in front of a CFO, to go sit in front of a board of directors and confidently say, this is the risk and exposure you have. And if you follow the plan that we built out for you, you'll be in a better place. And we can do that without having to read a compliance framework manual to the customer. And that's really what the end goal is, right? It's all about, if we present it to them, speak to them in their language, the client will feel more comfortable saying yes, and we'll be able to move the needle on revenue, on security, on all the things that matter. So that's LCI in a nutshell.
Man, when we're talking about meet your customers where they are, like we'll get more into that concept of like making it like the no nerd words. I love that. I'm kind of the other way. Like I didn't come from an MSP, right? So I'm trying to, I want more nerd words in my vocabulary, but I think like, I think some of the most fun MSPs, like Sugar Shot is a really great partner of ours. They have their head of customer success purposely doesn't come from the MSP space.
Right.
So their whole team has to like put it through their head of customer success, and she can tell them like, does it translate or does it not translate? Right.
Yep. So it's a true story. And that's the way it needs to happen. We need to take it to somebody who doesn't speak the language and say, hey, if I presented this, do you know what I'm talking about? And you don't want to speak to technology the way you would speak to your grandmother about technology, but you want to know who's in the room, and you want to talk to the people that are in the room appropriate within a conversation that's appropriate to to exactly what that audience is. So if your CEO's in the room, you're talking risk. If the CFO's in the room, you're talking budget. But you should be able to talk about both of those in just plain English and in the language of your customer. So we'll dive into that here.
Yeah, and I think opening that up a little bit. Thanks, Rachel. She's said 100 with an emoji. Meeting your customers where they are. Like, I think so many vendors or whoever can say this, and it's like it means one thing, but really, when you think about it at a higher level, like there's so many things that this means. Like verbiage, right? Like number 2 on here, communication method. Like that's what we're talking about. No nerd words. Physical location. Forget what podcast it was I was listening to. I think it was SaaStr. It was SaaStr. They interviewed like a CMO of like a unicorn company. And his whole thing was like, I'm going to 5 times as many conferences this year as I ever have, because he's like, COVID's over, quote unquote. I'm not going to get into that conversation, but
beware the political landmines.
Yeah, people are going places again. And he's like, people going to conferences are spending money. it's where my customers are, like it's people that are looking to grow. And so he's like, I'm doing it. I'm going where they are. Maybe that's a conference, maybe that's a chamber of commerce, maybe that's your customers' offices. But anyways, I got fired up about that because I thought that was just like such a cool take on it.
When I pick apart meeting your customers where they are, it rubs right up against be frictionless to work with. And in my mind, those two things together are a culture,
Yeah.
right? They're about more than going to physical locations. They're about more than joining a Facebook group or getting in a Slack channel. It's about having a culture that says our organization learns who you are and we find a way to come to you to deliver the products and services you need, as
Yeah.
opposed to saying, I built a framework and my framework is this box. And if you fit in this box, you have the privilege of coming to work with me.
Yeah.
And if you think about the difference between the customer experience of I'm coming to you, to your place to bring you what I have to offer, or you can come fit in my little square box, the experience is just incredibly different. And it's way easier when you've come to meet a customer where they are to talk them into following you on a journey than it is to say, come sit in my square box and do exactly as I tell you to do. And as IT guys, we want to control everything. You didn't come from this space, but I can tell you, like, there is a real desire here to say everyone gets exactly the same stack, so I can train all of my customers or all of my engineers exactly the same way, so that I only have to support my little square box. That doesn't fit the needs of your customers, especially in a SaaS world where all of them can go out and buy a line of business application for $29 a user and exponentially change the way they do business, the way they ring the cash register, and the way that they operate. But if we never learn how those other SaaS applications work, we can't provide them with the automations that we experience as MSPs, with the things we do to tie all of our products together and all of that. But that's really the next level value, is going where your customer is, learning how they do their business. And this is where the CIO role really opens up. When we go to the customer where they are, we get to learn about them. We get to charge them for higher end, more expensive services, help them
100%.
automate and build a cooler business for them. And that should be exciting to us.
Man,
way more exciting than everybody gets the same antivirus.
For sure. So many ways you can take that conversation. Like I think a big thing from the MSP's perspective is, like, you could take that to an extreme and all of a sudden you have like a different enterprise solution for every customer of yours. And then like, you're just going to fall apart. Like you can't manage like 15 different enterprise antiviruses, but you do need different solutions that meet your customers. They still need to be like multi-tenant and channel focused and MSP usable.
Well, and some of them won't be yours, I think, is the important thing.
100%.
Some of your customers are going to come to you with line of business apps that you have to find a way to support. And they've been the bane of our existence since the day that they lived on a server and we had a hard application to run. Now they live in a web browser and we have to figure out how to secure them differently. But we should be looking at those as opportunity and a way to literally go to our customer and help integrate the line of business app to the HR payroll system, to 365 for authentication, and to build some streamlining for them that we typically don't take the time to do.
Yeah. There's the big conversation. I feel like shadow IT, right, is like one of the big new things that's being talked about.
It is. I hate that phrase.
I'm sure there's a word for an in between, but what is it when you know it and ignore it, right? It's not shadow. It's like,
right. You got your blinders on, like just.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that happens, and we shouldn't be afraid to face off with those vendors and learn something about the software and find a way to incorporate it into a supportable infrastructure. I have a lot of conversations with the guys over at Augment and the guys over at Saslio about Shadow IT. We integrate with both of those products. And the big conversation is, if I don't know what products my customer uses, then when I fire Bobby tomorrow, I don't know what applications to shut him out of. And there's a stat out there that says like 83% of enterprise employees, when they leave the enterprise, still have access to sensitive data. And that has to do with exactly this. So, there's a lot of learning what your customer does helps you properly support them and say, hey, Mr. Customer, I deleted your customer out of 365 and the 3 other things we support. Here's 27 other applications they've logged into in the last 3 months. How do we get them out of these? Yeah,
that's awesome.
You
brought up the point. The more you know, and the more you're willing to support your customer there, the more you can charge and the more revenue's on the table for you. So, and people want help with that, right? And I think that's like such a cool opportunity. So I think we have, some slides to dig into this stuff a bit deeper. So let's talk about physical locations. We hit this at a high level. But, I like the first one here, prospecting. Alex, Can you define ICP for us? Just
Oh,
for
ideal
anyone
client
who-
profile, right? And this isn't, hey, they're in my town and they have at least 5 computers. They're my ideal customer. This goes back to what you were saying: is you can't support every line of business app on the planet. You can't support everything, but you could find yourself a nice little niche. I supported private schools. We did really well with them. We had a process. We knew how to work them. We did we did a lot of business with private schools, and it was a great ideal client profile for us. And when we figured out where they all hung out and figured out how to engage with them, we actually got invited to district-wide meetings and statewide meetings, and we got to pitch and have conversations around how they should do security and things like that. And next thing you know, you're where they hang out. They'll find a reason to do business with you, or they'll find a problem you solve that can help them. And so prospecting is really about knowing where your customers are. It's harder as an MSP than it was as a SaaS company, but as a SaaS company, like, that was our thing. We got locked out of trade shows. All these things got shut down, and we went, crap, we still got this thing we got to sell. So we joined Everything MSP, and we joined Chris Weiser's 7-figure MSP Facebook group, and we joined the MSP Geek Slack channel, and we hung out on Reddit. And when a question came up that fit into our wheelhouse and we knew we could answer, we just provided answers. We didn't try to sell anything. We just said, hey, I can weigh in on that. The best practice that we think the best practice around this ought to be something like this.
Yeah, you guys are so good at being thought leaders who are just right place, right time, strategically. Man, we could do a whole webinar on ICP. Like, I love the idea of that. And to your point, it is a bit harder as an MSP because, like, as a vendor, we can say, like, at least start with MSPs or in our ICP. But even with that, like, there's so much value in saying, like, my ICP uses this stack of software and wears a blue shirt on Wednesdays, and like getting really, really specific.
Well, as a vendor, it was easy because we launched a product and we talked in the space a lot. And then one day somebody signed up for our product from South Africa, and we went, holy crap, where'd that come from? And but you don't think about it. They speak English in South Africa. They can use all of our software. There's no reason that they shouldn't do business with us. So they just show up because you have this big internet presence. That's not the same for an MSP. They have to literally figure out where's the chamber group that your client profile hangs out. Where's the social group or the business group, and go be where they are. I've even heard some MSPs who are going out and starting Facebook groups and running a Facebook group for small businesses in XYZ town or in XYZ metropolis or whatever. I grew up in Dover, Delaware. There's nothing there. It's 40,000 people. A quarter of them work for the Air Force Base there, or for the state of Delaware. So they're all automatically off the list, right? Not a lot of opportunity. So we really had to get into our community and meet people and learn people. And I think as MSPs, it's easy to forget to do that.
I think you bring up a really good point there of knowing who's not in your ICP. Like, I think that's somewhere an MSP can start. Like, if they don't want to use Microsoft tools, like if they're not open to that conversation at all, it may not be worth trying to convince them of that. Like at Thread, if I talk about how tickets suck and someone tells me that they don't suck, I'm like, great. We don't really need to
tell me when you sober up.
Like we can, but we're probably not going to get to a point where it makes sense to work together. And as an MSP, if you have a list of 10 or 15 of those things, it's like, if these are triggered, then probably doesn't make sense. Then I think that helps you figure out where to go hang out, right?
Yeah. If somebody says dentist and you hear nails on a chalkboard, that's probably not your ICP, right? There are niches in the space. There are the right size of clients, right? There are MSPs who don't want to take anybody that's less than 10 people, 20 people, 2,000-3,000 a month, whatever those numbers are. You should have that dialed in, and then work on where those people spend their time and go meet them where they are.
100%. All right. So you have clients now, right? You prospected. How do we meet them where they are, like your actual clients?
Well, part of the reason I built Lifecycle Insights was because in 2008, somebody said to me, you can buy this thing called Lab Tech. You can solve 85% of your calls remotely. You don't have to roll a truck anymore. And your customers will love how fast you can get to everything and solve it. It sounded great to me. There was a recession coming on. My biggest customer wanted to cut cost, and I said, well, travel cost is probably the best place that we can cut cost. Like a dummy, I took 12 months worth of bills. I divided it by the number of endpoints and said, I'm going to charge you $44 an endpoint. And I spent another decade regretting that decision. But it made me a managed services provider, right? And I went from the point where proactive was, hey, I'm going to connect to a Cisco VPN, remote into your network, and try and finagle some stuff or roll a truck, to where we actually had these tools. The unexpected side effect of that was I went from my biggest customer having 180 employees and me knowing 170 of their names and where they'd sat in their office and where their kid played baseball or whatever it was about them. I went from knowing all that, from walking up and down the hallways and meeting people and just popping in when I was in the building, to losing all of that relationship in just a couple of years. I mean, it happens quicker than you think.
Yeah.
So if your clients are in the office, there's a lot of value in going back in to meet with them. And we had to restore that value. We had to rebuild that value with QBRs. And we did that by printing paper books, which sounds like it sounds criminal as an IT guy. Printing paper books, putting them on the conference room table, drawing on them with Sharpies in front of our customer, and having a strategic conversation about a roadmap, about a process, about where we were going. And getting back into that customer's office built a relationship, rebuilt a relationship that we had damaged by going, we're not going to roll a truck unless we have to.
Yep.
And so while that might be the engineer's answer, and it might be the right answer for your help desk, for your client success team, for your account managers, for your CSMs, whatever you call them, there is a lot of value in going out to meet with your customer. We talk about this with VCIO. Like, if you're trying to learn how that client's applications work so you can help automate them, go sit next to somebody who uses it.
Yep.
Talk
And
to
then
them
once
about
you're
how they work
there,
in their day.
you have to have the right stuff once you're there, right? Which life cycle's big on. I think of the episode of The Office where Michael is trying to save clients and he's taking like gift baskets around and no one wants the gift basket and he ends up like throwing it in a lake. And like saying weird things about someone's daughter because he like knew that context, but he didn't actually know that much about their business. Right. Versus in a different episode of The Office, I know Matt's a huge Office fan, so he's loving this. But when Jan and Michael go out to eat with one of their prospects and Jan starts hard pitching them and Michael stops her and like talks about value, at that point, he has like the right conversation.
Right.
And so especially when you're spending that much money to go be in person where someone is, or time or whatever it is, like you have to make sure you're equipped with the baby back Chili's. Yeah, maybe it's just that Chili's is the right place to do it in person.
Maybe, but what I'm going to say, we could go down the sales rabbit hole forever too. But what I will say is, your clients care way more about just having a real, honest, heart-to-heart conversation about their business than they do about you trying to sell them something. So if you feel like the words coming out of your mouth are going to sound gross like a salesman, just don't say them.
Yep.
Traditional sales in the MSP space is dead. I'm talking about this at MSP GeekCon. I'm actually going to write a book on it. Consultative selling is the only way to do it, and just go learn about your customer and they will find a reason to buy from you.
I love it. Yeah. And again, that's what you guys do.
Yep.
All right.
And that jumps right into referrals, right? We've gone back and we've repaired that relationship. We've gone to meet our client in their favorite locations. We're hanging out where our customers are. Now we're front of mind. Now they think of us all the time. Now we're in their space and they're, hey, let me introduce you to my friend. Right.
Yep.
And my favorite way to deal with this is, if you've got a client who hasn't given you a referral in a while, pick up the phone and just go, hey, Bobby, it's Alex over at Delaware Microcomputer. You know, I'm really embarrassed to say this, but you and I have been doing the business together for like 2 years, and I've never asked you a really important question. What does a good referral look like to you? Right. And what have I done? I've told Bobby that I want to send him a referral. Yep. I'm also kind of putting him on notice that I'm paying attention and we're going to send some referrals back and forth with each other. Right. But I don't have to be an asshole to say it. None of that's pushy. I don't have to go to my customer and go, who do you know that might see value in the products and services that I have to offer? Woohoo, right? None of that. Doesn't have to sound gross, doesn't have to sound slimy. In fact, I'm putting my best foot forward. And if I'm out with them, building relationships with them, that conversation's super easy.
Yeah. And as much as you can legitimately send referrals, then that doesn't really get. And what are you ideally doing? Meeting with small businesses all day long who could probably use the services of your customers.
And a lot of your customers are probably B2C. So you're meeting with users all over the place, hundreds of users at all your customers who probably want to do business with the rest of your customers. So one of the cool things they did at a community bank that my fiance worked at was every quarter, every salesperson brought one customer to the bank for lunch. And I think they had a boardroom, they had lunch. And so a construction company would get to meet a plumber, would get to meet an attorney, would get to meet, and they just bring them all in for lunch and have a conversation. And hey, right, we all bank at the same place. We're all kind of buddies in the same small town. And this is a good opportunity. MSPs could do stuff just like that to let their customers meet each other, and that stuff always tends to come back around in spades.
For sure, man. All right, let's jump to the next way you can meet people. So communication methods, we talked about, like no nerd words, right? What does communicating in the language of your customer look like?
Well, I mean, to me, it's understanding their business enough to know how they ring the cash register, so that when they
Yeah.
come to you and say, "Hey, Bobby, I need to open not a ticket, whatever thing we do in Thread, when I need when I need to create a ticket, right? When I need to start an
Yeah,
issue, you can look at it and say, man, that sounds like that's impacting your revenue. I probably need to address that right freaking now. That's probably
for
super
sure.
important to you, right? Versus, oh, one of your 17 black and white printers isn't printing. Okay, I tell you what, we'll set you up on a different printer and somebody will be out to look at it next week.
Yeah. Yeah, 100% the language of their business. And that gets into like, hopefully you have an ICP where your customers have a bit of a similar language and you're not supporting a construction company with 50 people on Blackberries. And then that's probably not what construction people use, but whatever it is, right? And then
You're dating yourself there. I'm not sure a BlackBerry is still a thing. You could have told everybody you were 25 before now, and now you're not anymore.
I love it. Yeah, so hopefully they're not like super different where it's a hedge fund and a construction company. But I do think like even within that, you're gonna have customers, and more granularly, you're gonna have employees of the same customer that work differently. And so how do you communicate in their language? For me, I think about the site contact, right? Like we work really closely with Cloud Radial and other customer portals. Site contacts eat those things up. Like they love it. But the end user, I like to use this analogy of like, if I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink whatever on my desk. So I have cold coffee here. I've been drinking it because I don't have time to go to my fridge and like get fresh water, right? And service is the same way for the end user. The site contact is going to go to the fridge. Like they love the fridge. They love all the resources and training things and all of that. But the end user is going to use whatever they can grab. And so you need to know what they're going to grab. If for us, if it's in Teams or Slack, like that's their desk.
Yeah.
If they don't use Teams much, then it's an app on their machine. Maybe it's your website. And there's different options for that.
And if you don't know Slack users, right? If you're a Teams user, you probably use Teams a lot in your day. If your company runs on Slack, holy crap, does your company run on Slack? Like that is a cult.
Yeah.
No offense to the Slack users. I work in a Slack organization now. They're serious about their Slack, right? They literally have an emoji they put on your comment if you don't comment something in a thread that belongs in a thread, and it's literally a spool of thread. And they're basically going, hey, put it in the thread. Don't clog up Slack. Like there are rules around Slack. There are spoken rules. There are unspoken rules. There are written rules. But if your client behaves there and can operate and can solve a trouble ticket there, that's a big thing. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, I was told this morning I had a question about setting up my new email signature, right? And I'm in a new organization and things are different. And what I was literally told was, hey, here's two Slack groups you need, or two Slack channels you need to know about, because and they're literally internal marketing and internal IT. Right. Hey, there you go. Brian's got our thread here. That is literally it. Which is funny because we're talking about thread to thread, but literally, internal marketing and internal IT, they want us to go to a Slack channel for internal IT, and they feel like the experience is good enough for their in-house experience. Yeah. So if that's the case, if I can move my conversation there with a tool like Thread, obviously we're having a better experience for our customer.
Yeah. The other side of that we see a lot is someone has Teams, but they don't really use it. So in that case, you don't want to be like, hey, our support's in Teams. Like maybe it'll help them move to Teams more. You can provide that, but you have to understand that customer.
Well, and that's the same as saying, go open a web portal that you never sign into and create a ticket.
Exactly.
And we'll help you, right?
Exactly.
If they don't live in Teams, and that's where knowing your customer and understanding how they communicate is important.
Yep.
And expectations is important too. And you want to start riffing on that one, and I'll kind of pick it up.
Yeah, man. Again, Matt, or one of our co-founders, I can see him in the chat, but Matt talks all about how humans move in real time and tickets move in SLA time. And I just got off a call with a really large MSP, and they were like, we know that we have to be better than our SLAs. Which, like, how frustrating is that when you've agreed to an SLA with a customer, they sign the paper, but then they're mad at you about it. And I think there's expectations at setting them, which you do when you sign an agreement and an SLA. But then there's also like reality. Like it's not just setting the expectation, it's morphing to the expectation. Like you don't want to have a meeting with your customer every month saying like, guys, remember it's a 24-hour SLA. We're doing good. You should still like us. Like sometimes
if you have to say that, you've already lost the argument, right? We have a partner who calls them service level arguments.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is exactly what they are. This is the threshold by which I expect you to be mad at me. But if your CEO is dead in the water and can't present that multi-million-dollar deal because something doesn't work, but I met my SLA. Are we still okay? No, you're still fired.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's that, and MSPs mostly know that, but that's where,
Yep.
and we always trained our help desk to say, hey, if I'm hearing you right, I need to solve this problem in the next 20 minutes. Or if I'm hearing you right, this black and white printer can wait 3 or 4 days and you can use the one across the hall.
Yeah.
And our customers got pretty good at, they were used to hearing that from us.
Yeah.
And they would literally call us and say, hey, I got a thing, and yeah, it can wait till tomorrow, but I just wanted to let you know about it so you could get on top of it. And they would volunteer that to us once they got used to it. But
Yeah.
you need to set that expectation that, hey, you know, Mr. End User who has a problem, I know this is, you feel like your hair's on fire right now. Is this a right now thing? Is this a next 2 hours thing? Or is this a next 2 weeks thing? And setting that expectation up front really does put you in a good place. We push our customers to stop talking about SLAs and tickets and all of that in the quarterly business review. We have asked them to specifically to remove it. You'll have a better customer experience. And think about that. You're saying it's the thing the customer wants to talk about and wants to complain about. And I'm saying, if you can get to a point where that gets stripped out of the meeting immediately becomes strategic instead of tactical, and my customer gets more value.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And
You're a partner at that point. You're not a service provider.
And so when we go into that meeting, we're literally sending an agenda ahead of time and saying, Mr. Customer, these are the things we're going to talk about. And when they call back and said, hey, Bobby was mean to Matt on the last service call, and I'm afraid we're going to have to talk about that instead. When they send that email, I'm picking up the phone and going, hey,
let's
you know
talk
what,
about it.
Mr. Customer, I'm so sorry, number one, that Bobby was a bully to Matt. And that'll never happen again. We'll take him out back and beat him. But I want to deal with that right now, so that you don't have to wait a week or 5 days or whatever until we get in front of you. Let's go solve that right now. And by the time you get there to meet with your customer about the strategic thing you wanted to talk about, they love you again because you solved the problem. You told them you went out back and beat Bobby. And really what you did was you went back to Bobby and went, really, Matt called in, was being a jerk again. I told you you have to bite your tongue, right? But that's okay. The communication with the customer is we set the expectation. We're not going to talk about this thing in that meeting. Like, don't take it off the rails. Then tickets are the same. Like, set that expectation up front. In sales, you know, there's this upfront contract where we say, hey, the next step to me looks like this. Can we agree that that's the next thing? And it's no different in a ticket or in a sales engagement or in an existing client engagement. It's all about set the expectation and then under promise, over deliver.
Yeah, that triggered another thought that I had about, you know, when you make the communication method as seamless as possible, right? Like you talked about lowering friction. You'll typically see, and we see this when like you meet a customer in Teams who you've been forcing to hold their nose and pick up the phone. All of a sudden, there's a bit of an increase in ticket volume, but it's all those things that they weren't telling you about. And so now you're able to delight them, and like that little button on their keyboard that wasn't working, that they were just ignoring until you came on site. And then they had this laundry list of like all the things that you needed to help
while you're in
them.
the building. Yeah,
exactly. And so the easier the communication method, the more they're going to tell you about, the more opportunities you get to help them quickly, and the shorter your ticket times are.
Well, and the more opportunities you get to amaze them and show them that there's a better way and that technology doesn't have to be the enemy. Right.
Exactly.
I love the analogy holding your nose, but I feel like a lot of customers do that every time we talk about technology. So so let's move on. Let's step forward here. Complexity is I was just going to say complexity is a complex one, but my English teacher would have been mad at me for using the word to describe the word.
I was saying nerd words was on communication, which I guess it is, but it's more on complexity. So
yeah, right. But all of this, there's a common thread here. See what I did? There's a common thread here that communication goes all the way through this, and speaking in your customer's language goes top to bottom with meeting them where they are. You know, if I went to an MSP and talked to them like they were an auto dealer, they wouldn't want anything to do with me. If I go to an MSP and speak to them like they're a business professional who helps people solve technology problems, but maybe struggles to communicate the value of what they do, sometimes they go, "Ooh, that guy gets me, and he might be able to help me solve it."
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And then, you know, you think about if that user, if it's internal IT, like how different is that, right? Then you'd need to go like a little more towards nerd words, but it's about understanding the complexity that user wants to work at, and then still bringing it back to value, right? Because you could go down like a really dangerous path where I'm nerding out with the tech, but I'm actually wasting their time because like they're not doing what they need to be doing. I'm not doing what I need to be doing. But yeah, meeting them where they are, like from a complexity perspectives.
It all kind of comes back to that. And as we look at it, you know, we all have clients who are in a different place in their journey. And we encourage everybody to kind of pick their client apart and decide, where is this client in their journey? Are they way down the compliance rabbit hole? Do they have to do CMMC or HIPAA or NIST? Are they just Bob's Construction and they have 2 computers and all they do is ship mailing labels with them, print mailing labels, and ship off payroll with it? There's a way different level of maturity there. And you have 2 different conversations with those customers. So, make sure that you bring to the table for that customer what they need in the moment. And that goes right back to what we were talking about earlier, is you have to understand the customer and their business and where they're at in their journey to bring the right things to the table. So if you're not engaging on the regular, you're going to mistake a client who has a ridiculously complex offering with one who's actually mature enough to deal with it. And you're going to bring them the wrong answers. It really comes down to us making sure that even a client who has a real complex environment, that we ask them to take a step back, start at step 1, not start at step 10, and build their way to the more complex things. And that's hard for us to do as MSPs sometimes. We walk into an environment, it's a dumpster fire, everything looks like it's a problem. And it's hard for us to step back and say, Mr. Customer, you didn't get here overnight, and we won't fix it overnight.
Yeah.
But we've seen worse, and we can solve it.
And there's different levels of them understanding the problem, right? Like all their stuff may be working, but you walk into the server room and it's like spaghetti, but it doesn't actually matter to them, right? So you're like, this is a big deal.
Makes my eyes bleed, but they don't care. Yep.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, I'm going to fix this. I'll communicate to them a little bit, but you don't need to start explaining the rate on their servers when like you can just go fix it without really even communicating that depth of it.
Yep. No, absolutely. And, one of the conversations we would have in those scenarios is, Mr. Customer, you don't need to know what all this gear does. You need to know when I'm done with it, there will be a label on every cable you should care about, so that if we ever have to call you and ask you to do something, you'll be able to read the label and you'll be able to know you're doing the right thing. Today, you can't do that, right? So we'll reduce it down to a level where they can manage it at their maturity or at their maturity level.
Yeah. And I think like this piece is something that's so important to train your whole team on too. Like when you talk about meeting your customers where they are, from like knowing them personally, like, your account managers, if you're at that scale, are probably going to be better at those types of things. But the complexity level, like that's something like, especially when you have like a level 3 tech and that type of stuff, how do you help them understand these things?
It's funny. Everybody asks me that. And I think back to my L3 tech and I'm like, well, we didn't allow him to talk to people because he couldn't turn complex into simple. He couldn't strip the nerd words out of it. And I spent a career as a non-technical MSP owner, standing between the smartest guy in the room and my customer and doing English to English translation.
Yeah.
So it is really hard, and you have to identify those level 3 folks who have that skill set. And those are the folks who might actually transition into a VCIO role or some kind of a higher level role, versus the guy who's just going to be the wicked sick network engineer and is going to be the guy who can do all the network voodoo. But you need to stand somebody else in between him and the customer to explain the why.
Yeah. And I think, the meeting them where they are, you can also meet that tech where they are, right? It's like, do you want to learn more of how to get into the VCIO role? Do you want to be able to communicate with customers at this level and translate things? Or like, do you just want to be heads down and never have to talk to somebody? Because like, I can work around that too, but you definitely don't want to make one person do the other one.
Right. And just answering Matt in the chat, I think it's a combination of frameworks and soft skills. And the problem as an MSP is we don't practice the soft skills, right? We're all about the frameworks and we spend no time on the soft skills. And that goes to sales. It goes to talking to customers. When I worked, before I was I really in IT, I taught Dell help desk support, and I literally worked for an outsourcer and taught people how to answer the phone and say, thank you for calling Dell technical support. This is Bob. How can I help you? I'm an MSP today because in 2002, my job got shipped to India and I had to go find something else to do. So the point there was, when we talked to people on the phone, we were talking to consumers, but we actually trained our techs on things so simple as, when you're standing over top of a computer and looking down at it and you see something on the right-hand corner, before you tell the customer, hey, reseat the card that's over here on the right-hand corner, you need to make sure that they have the computer facing the same direction as you, right? In MSPs, we don't do any of that. And it seems super rudimentary and stupid, but you really do have to start there with a lot of individuals to make sure that they communicate with the customer the same way that that the customer's thinking, and that the picture that they're painting for the customer, especially remotely, is the message that the customer's picking up. And those soft skills, take time to develop, they take practice to develop, they take experience to develop. So that's a great point, Matt. And it's something that we probably should practice a little more. In fact, at my MSP, we did a game about once a quarter, and I'd buy these little boxes of Legos because I'm a Lego nerd, if you couldn't figure it out. And I'd sit two people back to back, and I'd give one person the instructions and one person the Legos. They didn't know what they were building, no idea. So the person with the instructions is saying, "Hey, find the pointy piece with the three bumps."
How often did they finish building?
Oh, they'd all get done, but you'd wind up with like 4x4 trucks with the wheels on the roof. And the rule was like, the person with their back to you, you have to do exactly what they tell you to do. You can't overthink it and try and re-engineer it. Like, you got to do exactly what they tell you to do. We get all kinds of weird stuff. But it's a great exercise. And for the price of a cheap box of Legos, like, you can have a lot of fun with your staff, but you can also help them see how they do and don't communicate well.
Yeah,
I haven't thought about that in a long time.
All right, cool. I mean, we had some fun conversation, conceptual. We hit some different stuff. What do you guys think? Emotional outburst, questions, comments?
That's a life cycle insights thing. We have a guy that does all of our webinars and all of our training. These questions, comments, emotional outbursts. That's the normal life cycle insights ending. So you're stuck with it, even though Mark's on vacation this week.
I love it.
We're all for the emotional outbursts. We consider them participation around here. So no worries.
100%. Matt, yeah, great question. We've had some fun stuff in the chat throughout it.
Yeah.
So we'll leave a bit longer for a question or a thought or a recommendation or something that you guys do really well as far as meeting your customers where they are.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what the folks on the channel are doing to meet those customers there. We've done a lot of interesting things at Lifecycle, but I learned something really cool from an MSP that we work with that does Teams Tuesdays. And every Tuesday they run a 30-minute lunchtime webinar. They invite all their customers, all the users at all their customers, and they say, come hang out in Teams. Microsoft's always changing it. There's always something we can teach you. That's and they awesome. Do a 15, 30-minute, just quick, hey, here's 2 or 3 things you might not have known that you could do with Teams. And that has really helped them encourage the use of Teams, the improved collaboration around Teams. And if you're really trying to get your clients to utilize a product like that, teaching them to use it is one of the best things you can do. But there's a secret to that, in that you are building a sense of community, because you'll have the same people on those webinars every couple of weeks, and they get to know each other. They get to know you. They start to feel more connected to you than when they're just talking to you from the back of a trouble ticket.
100%. Dan asked
great questions there. So I'm going to give you I'm going to preface this with, this is Marnie's answer, not mine, because as a white man in America, I can't say this, but Marnie would tell you that a QBR should be the same length as a woman's skirt, long enough to be, oh shoot, I'm going to screw that up now. Long enough to be complete and short enough to be interesting. So basically, we need to bring to the table what's actionable to the customer at that time. And basically, this could be 90 minutes. It could be 45 minutes. It could be an hour. Most of our customers are 45 minutes to an hour. You get beyond that, and you're going to lose your customer. As far as topics, I'm going to tell you less is more. And the clients who are having the most success come to the table with risk assessment to show kind of status quo where you're at. Some sort of budget forecast to show what money we need to spend to stay at the current level without sliding backwards and creating more exposure and more risk. And then a roadmap and a remediation plan for, hey, if we wanted to get better, or if we just want to keep even, these are the things we need to do in the next 12 to 18 months. Those are kind of the key pillars to me. You can talk about tickets, you can talk about SLAs, you can talk about all of those things, but those 3 key pillars really carry the right conversation with, here's the risk and exposure we own, here's the money we have to spend, and if we wanted to carry less risk. And if you notice, none of that's about technology.
Yep.
All about, Mr. Customer, how do you run your business, and can you afford to run your business in the current economic climate or where we're going or whatever.
Yeah, Dan says he loves it. I love it too, because there's room for that to change, right? It's not the same conversation. It's not the same metrics and numbers every time.
Well, it's going to change, right? Something's going to go sideways in your client's environment, and you're going to have to talk about that. Or Server 2012 is going to go end of life, October, people. Server 2012 is going to go end of life, and that's going to have to bubble to the top, and it's going to have to be part of your conversation. Their vertical may be a big part of the conversation, right? So we're going to customize some of this to talk about HIPAA compliance, or whatever it is that's in their vertical. Maybe it's one of these folks who's getting the FTC safeguards applied to them, and now we have to go talk about that. Yep. So there's always going to be things that change. but there's always going to also be some static things that are real for everybody. And in my mind, budget is number one, because our clients, I always like to say, our clients aren't the federal government. They can only spend every dollar once.
Yep.
And so we have to give them some advice, right? The two fastest ways to get fired as an MSP: lose their data, surprise them with a big expense.
Yeah, 100%.
And so as you go to that next slide, those are two things that ScalePad can help you with. We actually own a product called Backup Radar that can help you monitor your backups and make sure you don't lose their data. And we have a QBR platform that can help you have some of those conversations around budgeting and forecasting and such. If you want to learn more, check out scalepad.com. You can schedule a demo right on the Lifecycle Insights website, or you can reach out to me directly.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah.
And if you want to know more about Thread, I am on LinkedIn. I have a pirate hat on. You can go to getthread.com and schedule a demo there. We're about helping you meet your customers where they are. So that's primarily in Teams and Slack. There's a lot of ways to do it. We'll also write all your time entries for you. We'll prioritize your tickets. There's a lot of stuff with AI. Service collaboration is kind of the big idea that we think about.
I mean, you had me at we'll write your time entries for you.
Yeah.
Because as an MSP owner, I know I got tired of beating my technicians for not writing their time entries. So, if it could save me from having to throttle some, and I'm sure for those of you on here who are engineers or folks who have to write time entries, I'm sure you're tired of getting yelled at for not doing them too. So,
yep, we have a partner that says it saves them 300 hours a month. They're a big MSP, but it's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's wild. That's
so
awesome.
Cool. All right. Thanks for attending, everybody.
That's it, Rachel. I appreciate it.
We'll give you guys a little bit of time back, and forward to seeing everybody soon.
Thanks for coming out, everybody.